Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Postgrad Solutions webinar. We are joined today once again by Heriot-Watt, and today we're going to be talking about energy, renewables, and marine science, specifically at the Orkney Islands at Heriot-Watt University. I'm joined today by a host of colleagues at Heriot-Watt, but I'm going to introduce you to begin with to Simon Waldman, who's going to be taking you through the first 10-15 minutes, specifically about the Orkney Islands and about the impressive nature of the islands. And then I'll be back for a Q&A towards the end. If anyone does have any questions, any issues, concerns, please put it in the Q&A or the chat facility. I'll endeavour to get round to your questions or anything that you've got concerning you towards the end. And we do have an admissions expert on hand as well. So if you've got any funding, scholarship, or any admissionsy types questions, please pop it in the chat and we'll endeavour to come back to you. But Simon, over to you. I'll be back for the Q&A towards the end.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Yes, so from me also, welcome everybody. My name is Simon Waldman. I'm one of the lecturers here at Heriot-Watt's Orkney campus. With me, we have Joe Porter, who is another of the program leaders, and Karen Alexander, third program leader. So we'll all be talking about our three master's programs that we teach from this campus. Also joining us is Rafaela O'Rourke. She was one of our students last year, and she now works in the industry just up the road. So she's here in case you have questions later about the student experience. She can give that angle on things, and we have told her, please be honest. And also joining us is Sarah Beattie from the admissions team at the university. So she'll be able to help with any questions you have on those sort of matters. So thank you, everybody. The first thing we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you a bit about the Orkney Islands themselves and a bit about our campus and why you might want to study here, which is quite an unusual location for a university. We'll do that for a few minutes, and then we'll talk about each of the three programs that we offer, and that is Renewable and Sustainable Energy Transition, Marine Renewable Energy, and International Marine Science. We'll spend a few minutes on each of those, and then we'll move on to Q&A, and that's probably the most important part of this event, I guess, is giving you a chance to ask questions of us. So we're looking forward to that as well. So moving on, if I can actually get this to move on, there we go. Moving on again. Why Orkney? Or I don't know how many of you know even where Orkney is, but this map, I don't know if you can see my cursor actually, but this map, the top left image here, gives you an idea of where Orkney is. We're perched right off the north coast of Scotland. And it's a group of 16 inhabited islands. They have been inhabited for about 7,000 years. Since prehistoric times, and in fact we have the oldest village in Europe not still inhabited. So we have lots of prehistoric archaeology. We have lots of history. It was a Viking stronghold. It only became part of Scotland in the 15th century. But nowadays we have about 20,000 people, actually about 22,000 people. And it says here strategic location, and you might wonder why that is. There's a few reasons. First of all, we think of Orkney nowadays as remote, as being perched off the northern tip of Scotland. But this map in the top right shows you how the Viking earldoms worked. And you can see there that Orkney is actually quite an important crossroads in that part of history between the Nordic areas and North America and Iceland. And this was one of the places the Vikings traded with the rest of Scotland from. And we may see that sort of crossroads come back again in the future. Some of my colleagues are more expert on this than I am, but as the ice melts in the Arctic, as we start talking more about northern sea routes, then again, Orkney may well become strategic as a gateway to Europe and a gateway to the North Sea from the Arctic. But beyond the location, there are other aspects. Orkney has very strong tides, and probably the gap between Orkney and Scotland is probably the second best tidal energy site in the world. It has a lot of wind. It's usually windy here. It's a great place for wind power. Doesn't have that much sun sometimes, and it has strong waves. So from a renewable energy point of view, it's very important. It also has a very large harbour in the former Scapa Flow, one of the largest natural harbours in the world. And that image in the bottom right shows its importance to naval fleets during the World Wars. But we're anticipating it being really, really important in the future for the installation and maintenance of offshore energy as well. Of course, it's not just energy. I'll come on to the other aspects in a couple of slides' time. So our campus here, which interestingly we don't have a picture of on this slide, but there we go. Our campus here, we have been here since 1989. And originally, Heriot-Watt set up a campus here mostly to be involved with the environmental assessment of the oil industry as that was setting up here. And of course, that's moved on, but it's fair to say we're still focused very much around marine resources of all sorts, whether that means energy, whether that means fisheries, whether that means space more broadly. And we started teaching here in 1990, but we got this new building custom built for us in 2019, which you've seen on the previous slide. We have about 9 or 10 staff here, between 10 and 30 master's students in any given year, plus about 10 PhD students. So it's quite a small, quite a tight community, which is really unusual compared to your average university campus. You can interact with most of your staff from day to day. You'll see us having lunch in the tea room. You can share a table with us. It's very different to your average university campus in that regard. And as it says, originally about marine resources and their management, now about all sorts of things. And this is a slide. This is showing in the center there is the fairly famous wave energy device, Polaris, from a few years ago. And we're not primarily engineers here. We're not designing energy devices here. What we're looking at usually is how they interact with the rest of the world, how they interact with the biological environment. They're looking at the biofouling on the left, how they interact with the physics of the oceans, looking at the bottom section there, how they might interact with other users of the sea, such as fisheries, and about the governance of the space up the top there. So there's a picture of our campus again, purpose-built campus with, we like to think, nice facilities. We have someone sitting in a chair looking at a laptop. That is, I guess, what one does on a university campus nowadays. The community is a really important part of being a student here. Because we're so small, you're not going to be joining university clubs. There's not going to be a university basketball society or a university gaming club or anything like that. But Orkney is a thriving community, and all these things exist here outside the university. So by moving here, you're becoming a part of that community. And that means that you're not just, if you go to a university in a city, you travel to the campus, you go to your lectures, then you go home. Here, sure, you travel to the campus and you go to your lectures, but then the guy you're playing volleyball with might work for a local environmental consultancy. The guy you meet in the supermarket might be the managing director of a renewables developer, for example. It's a very tight community. Stromness is a real cluster of energy and marine science. And it's also part of the wider Orkney community. You're part of a community that is at the cutting edge of change that is coming from all these new developments, and you can get some real insight from that as well. It is also a great centre for arts and culture. There's also, in the summer, people tend to be doing outside sports and things because we have these long days and long evenings. In the winter, people tend to move inside for music, for art, and so forth. And I'm not quite sure why sports facilities is the caption of a picture of the aurora, but yes, if you're lucky, you may also get to see the Northern Lights while you live here. This is aimed perhaps more at the marine science students. I'm slightly less qualified to talk about it, but Orkney is a really unusual environment in terms of its biodiversity and in terms of the accessibility of a lot of this with sheltered waters and also in the change that is coming with climate change in those waters. There are a lot of protected conservation areas, but for close and easily accessible to human activity and a huge diversity of habitats. If you have questions about that, please ask them, because I'm not an expert on the ecological aspects of things, but other people on this call are. So please do feel free to ask your questions if you'd like to know more about that aspect. Economically, I believe the biggest part of the economy here still is agriculture. Tourism is a very close second, and fishing is there in third place as well. Historically, oil and gas has been a big deal. That is lessening over time as North Sea oil lessens, but renewable energy, of course, is increasing. So you can see there the ferry that links us to the mainland. Down at the bottom, you can see some of our students standing next to a tidal energy device some years ago. One of the important things here, as I mentioned, is this cluster of energy-related and environmental-related companies and organizations Here are a few of them. EMEC, in fact, employs Rafaela at present. EMEC and Aquaterra, which is and Exodus and Aquaterra, both environmental consultancies, both of whom have a lot of our alumni working for them now, because every year a few of our students tend to stay and be longer term parts of the Orkney community. Green Marine is a marine operations company. The director of it used to be a fisherman, and at some point he converted to using his seafaring expertise for renewable energy purposes instead. And OREF, the Orkney Renewable Energy Forum, is an organisation that gets all these organisations together. This is a unique place to do research as well, and we'll hear a bit more about some of these things later on. The Ireland Centre for Net Zero is something where our part in it involves more than Heriot-Watt, but our part of it is led by Professor Susan Kromdiek, who is one of the people teaching on the RESET programme. And transition engineering is her big idea, looking at, we know where we need to get to in the future, but how do we get there, which is sometimes a much harder question. And looking at how we get out of these wicked problems that keep us trapped in unsustainable systems, how we change that and move to a sustainable future. Transex, Dr. Karen Alexander, and also on the call with us today, is looking at, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong about this, as I understand it, looking at previous changes in energy that Britain has gone through and how we can use those to inform us about the current changes in energy. We have Professor Asim Kinra, who's recently joined us and also teaching on the RESET programme, whose research area is sustainable logistics. Myself, my background is about the physics of tidal energy and also now looking at offshore wind. You can see some of my work in the bottom left. Dr. Christine Serbule, who teaches on international marine science mostly, but also on some of the others, works on sustainable fishing gear. And Professor Porter, also on the call today, who does many things, but this particular picture is about blue carbon. It's about the carbon that is absorbed and retained by the marine environment. Very quickly on the energy side, this is an interesting progression that we've gone through in that 10, 15 years ago, we were thinking, how do we generate renewable energy? Wind turbines, tidal turbines, and so forth. And a lot of that research did happen in Orkney. Then we moved on to, we have all this renewable energy, but how do we get it to where we need it? Dealing with the constraints of the grid, trying to be smarter about it, building in storage and so forth. And now we're moving on to energy systems in a more integrated way, integrating more with the storage and smart grids, smart meters, and thinking about the overall system rather than individual parts of it. And these are all things that will be covered on the energy courses. Okay, so that's a bit about Orkney. If you want to know more about Orkney, about it, or what it's like to live here, what it's like to study here, please do ask questions, and many of us will be happy to talk about that. What we're on to now is talking about the 3 programs that we offer. And I'll briefly mention these 3 programs. They are available in Orkney and they are also available online. This webinar is not about the online, it's about the on-campus experience. And I think the on-campus experience is the better experience. And I would say if you can come to campus, do, because you get embedded in the Orkney community in that way that I described. The online is really popular with people who aren't able to move to Orkney for a year because of cost of moving, because of family commitments, because of visa difficulties, that sort of thing. So it is there if you are not able to make it here, and it is the same content in the programs. You learn the same things, but you don't get the same benefit of being embedded in this community with the industry. So first one to talk about is my program, which is the MSc Renewable and Sustainable Energy Transition. That's a bit of a mouthful, but it does beautifully abbreviate to RESET. And the first thing to note is this is not an engineering course. We do have many engineers who come on the program, but it's not going to teach you more specialized, detailed engineering about building wind turbines, for example. It's for people who want to work in renewables, and it's for people who want to lead change on the transition engineering angle to make future energy systems sustainable. And also if you want to spend a year living in Orkney doing all of this. But it's a conversion course. There is no specific undergraduate subject required. You do need either to have an undergrad degree or to have relevant industry experience. But the idea is that you'll learn a broad spectrum across the industry, which really helps you with employability. The idea is if you are an engineer, you'll come out of this understanding what the environmental consultants are talking about. If you have a background of finance, this will equip you to do finance in renewables by understanding what the engineers are talking about, and so on and so forth. So the best way to think about it is this diagram in the top left. We covered introduction to the technology. We talk about how wind energy works, how solar power works, and so forth. We cover and also how it integrates in grids. We have an introduction to the environmental aspects, and there's some variants on which module you can do on that, but you do one of those modules. We have an introduction to the economics and to project development and these kind of angles. So you kind of got all those three working together. And then surrounding all this and using all of this is transition engineering, this new discipline that is asking, how do we get from here to there? How do we drive this change that we know we need to see? So we cover all these basics of these things: renewable energy technologies, economics and finance, environment, project development. There's a bit of an emphasis on community energy because we have a lot of that going on in Orkney, and one of the people who helped to develop the program is heavily involved with that. And transition engineering. We try to maintain as much connection with industry as we can. We have regular guest speakers. In fact, one of the modules is mostly guest speakers, where we have experts from industry talking about their areas of expertise or their experience of project development. We try to get out to some renewable energy sites, and these vary from year to year because it depends who can host us, but there's usually something. And of course, our dissertation projects. Everyone for the third semester of their studies does a personal research project for their dissertation, and some of those usually are in collaboration with industry partners. Graduate destinations is because we have such a wide range of people coming to us, we also have a very wide range of destinations. But the most common ones are the renewable energy developers, are the environmental consultancies and the energy consultancies, are the government and the regulators. We've got a number of people working with the Scottish government and with the Welsh government. I'm not sure if we have anyone in Westminster at present, but we probably do. We certainly have a few people working in energy utilities and working in supply chain companies. And Rafaela is a good example of people we have working in the test centers as well. So a huge range of destinations. And again, if you have specific questions, we might be able to give you specific examples. But you've heard me talk for long enough. So I'm going to hand you over now to Dr. Karen Alexander to talk about her program. Karen.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Simon. And hi, everybody. Great to have this opportunity to come and talk to you today a little bit, tell you a little bit about some of the programs that we offer. So I'm the program director for our MSc in Marine Renewable Energy, MRE. And this program actually sits almost midway between the program that Simon's just described, the research program, and the program that Joe will talk about after us, the International Marine Science. So it actually brings in components of each. In terms of who this program's actually for, it really is focused for those who want to work in the emerging wind, wave, and tidal energy sector, and particularly in the sort of more management focused side. So again, as Simon mentioned with Reset, this is not an engineering program. There are components of engineering that will come into it. And similarly, we've had quite a lot of engineering students come and undertake the project, but it's actually much more focused around how we take these technologies, place them in a receiving environment, and how that receiving environment interacts with the technologies. So it's very much for those who want to work in the more project management space, to have a broad overview of wind, wave, and tidal energy development and how it occurs, and to help foster that process. It's really for those who want to be leaders in areas such as site development, strategy, consenting, deployment planning, relationship management, and even policy. And similarly, when we get on to where some of our graduate destinations are, we'll talk about that. And it's really for those who want to be immersed in the place that's leading the world on marine renewables. So Simon covered a little bit of this earlier when he was talking about the Orkney campus and the fact that it's a tight-knit community and very much located right in the midst of what is going on in marine renewable energy development. You know, we have the world's first testing centre for these particular technologies. The European Marine Energy Centre is located here in Orkney. We have several of the energy developers who are located here in Orkney. We have several of the environmental consenting organisations that are located here in Orkney. So Orkney is really the forefront of this particular industry. It is known around the world for being this. We get a lot of people coming to visit us here to learn from our experience with marine renewable energy. So if you want to be at the forefront, then Orkney is the place to be. And again, similar to the RESET programme, any disciplinary background is acceptable, but you must have an undergraduate degree or relevant expertise. But we get graduates coming and undertaking this programme with all sorts of backgrounds, from social sciences and history and anthropology, through to engineering, through to environmental studies, computer technology, all sorts of different backgrounds. So there's no specific background necessary, but you do need to have an undergraduate degree or relevant expertise. Next slide, please, Simon. So in terms of what the programme actually covers, again, as I mentioned, it sits in between RESET and International Marine Science. So you'll see that there are a lot of overlapping topics that we talk about here, but primarily MRE looks at the renewable energy technologies themselves. It looks at energy transitions also, and it focuses on some of the more marine specific topics. So things like oceanography, economics of renewables and marine planning and policy, marine surveying, monitoring and management, geographical information systems. So there's practical skills-based opportunities for learning as well. And then similarly, again, we have a lot of links to industry. Through the renewable energy technologies courses, there will be some who have guest speakers. Similarly, for my one of the courses I lead, which is on marine planning, we bring in marine planners with expertise working in the industry to talk through their experiences. We also have site visits to some of the areas where marine renewable energy is occurring. And there is also the opportunity for students to work with industry on their dissertation projects as well. And this is always something that we are keen to help foster. Next slide, please, Simon. And in terms of some of the typical graduate destinations, again, these won't be surprising given what Simon covered for the previous programme, but we tend to have our graduates going to work for renewable energy developers. And some of the examples include Orbital Marine Power, Muirhall Energy and RWE. They often go to work for industry bodies as well, trade representatives such as Marine Energy Wales, again, working in government, procurement and construction. A lot of our graduates go into environmental and energy consultancies such as Aquaterra and Exodus Group, again, who are based here in Orkney, and also test centres such as EMEC. And with that, I believe that's the last slide from me. So I will pass over to Professor Jo Porter to talk about the next programme.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm delighted to be here to talk about the programme that I'm involved with, which is the MSc International Marine Science. So who is this programme for? This is for people that want to work in marine biology, marine ecology, marine biodiversity, fisheries, sectors of the blue economy, and people who are interested in understanding impacts of human activity on the marine environment. It's for people that are interested in gaining first-hand experience of high-quality marine habitats. We are especially blessed here in Orkney to have access to some pristine environments, including seagrass. As you can see on the left in the picture here, merle, which is a calcified algae. We've also got very dense kelp forests around Orkney. which support an abundance of marine life, and also some important shellfish reefs, which are also highly biodiverse, as well as other what we call priority marine features for the purposes of conservation. So overall, people that want to gain an understanding of marine environmental impact, conservation and restoration, there are excellent opportunities for learning about these aspects. And we run our programme here in Orkney. We also offer it online, and we do also have one course, which is an overseas tropical marine field course. So for those of you also with interests in the warmer waters, we do dip our toes into that for one of the courses in this programme. Can we go to the next slide, please, Simon? So what do we cover in this programme? So there is, as Karen indicated, a little bit of overlap in some of the aspects, as you might expect. But obviously the focus is very much on the environmental and ecological side. So we do have courses in marine biodiversity, environmental monitoring, fisheries ecology, marine planning, ecotoxicology of the marine environment, oceanography and environmental processes, as well as an emphasis on practical skills in marine surveying. So we don't just talk about surveys, we actually design surveys. We go out and do surveys, and then we report on the surveys that we've done. And as I mentioned, we do also dip our toe into the tropical marine ecosystems. The picture you can see on the left here, it's not in the tropics, although the colour of the water does look quite tropical. And this is an example of two of our students doing their dissertation project work on one of the several very nice seagrass meadows that exist around the islands here. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Simon? So just to cover some of the typical graduate destinations of people that have taken part in this programme. We've had quite a number of students that have gone on to work for conservation organisations, statutory conservation organisations, including NatureScot and the JNCC, a variety of different roles within those organisations. So it could be a role within the restoration team, it could be a role within policy, it could be a role within science communication, because there's a lot of community-based conservation and restoration work happening now. So there's always a good, strong need for good science communication. Also, and very recently actually, we've got a good example of a student that joined what we call a non-governmental organisation. So for example, the lady in the picture here on the left, Katie, just recently joined the Arran Coast project that you might have heard of. And so she's going to be leading on some scientific work to support the conservation activities of that group based on the west coast of Scotland. And there's also a variety of other NGOs which would welcome people who have the skills that can be developed during the participation in this programme. There's also governmental roles. Marine Scotland Science, for example, we've had quite a few students have gone to work sometimes in the climate change team, sometimes in policy roles. And also we've had a number of students who have joined us from overseas and then gone back to the countries they came from and have taken up international roles. So, for example, we've had students that have gone to work for the United Nations and also for the European Commission in roles which support marine conservation and restoration aspects. We've also got strong links with the aquaculture sector, the fisheries sector, and the renewables sector. So we've also had students that have gone to join roles in those kind of areas. And of course, we've had a number of students that have wanted to continue on in academic research. So some of those students have stayed on and joined in as PhD students or as research technicians. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of what you could expect if you are considering to join the MSc International Marine Science. And I would say, just to reinforce Simon's earlier point, it's really great if you can make it to Orkney, because I can get you onto those wonderful habitats where you can learn a lot about the biodiversity and the ecosystem health. We try our best for online, but it's a different experience. So with that, I think that's the end of my section of slides. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Joe. I've got a slide here of testimonials from various companies and students. I'm not going to read this out to you. I would just leave it up for a while as we move on to Q&A, which I believe Gareth is going to host. So perhaps everyone would like to turn their cameras on so we have the full panel available to us. I will pass back to Gareth.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. And thank you to Joe as well. Always great to hear from so many different perspectives. Can I start by talking a bit more about Orkney, if that's okay, Joe and Simon? I think, Joe, your point at the end there about if you get a chance, please come to Orkney, because it sounds like not only are the opportunities great to develop your education, but it also sounds like a great place to live as well. People might see and hear things and go, it's a remote island. It's not the Maldives. It's not places like that people might compare it to. But it is a great place to live, isn't it, Simon? If I can start with you and then we'll move on to Joe.
Sure, it's probably worth asking all of us here, and Rafaela as
Yeah, of
well, in
course.
particular. By some measures, it is remote. It is a long way from major cities. You can fly to Edinburgh in an hour and a quarter, but that's quite expensive. If you drive or if you get the buses, it takes basically a day's journey by road or rail and by sea. But also, we're not a desert island in the middle of nowhere. And compared to much of Scotland, we're actually quite well connected. We can get to Edinburgh in an hour and a quarter, which is not something you can say for many places, and London in a bit longer. We have a big Tesco, big supermarket. We have a cinema. We have lots of sports facilities. So we are a long way away from major cities, but that doesn't mean that there aren't facilities here. And, there is a decent sized community here that has a lot going on.
Joe, if I can move to you at this point, presumably it's very accessible. And as a result of that, like Simon's mentioned a few times already, it's not remote, although it is remote, sorry, you're not cut off. From that perspective, international students, that must be great because it's accessible from all angles of the world.
Yeah, no, I think it's for international students, there's a really big opportunity here and it's very accessible. The community here, particularly in Stromness, is very welcoming to students from all around the world. And, just a few examples, the last few years, we've had quite a few students from Indonesia that have joined us. We've had students from Thailand. We've had students from Ghana, Nigeria. It really does enhance the cultural experience from our point of view, but also the community here is very welcoming and loves to meet and interact with people coming from different communities, and hear about the aspirations for, what they'd like to achieve and what they'd like to take back, when they return home.
Rafaela, can I move to you at this point? And apologies, I've not come to you sooner. But talk to me about your experience, because obviously you've seen it firsthand. So let's talk about what you experienced and what your main takeaways were.
Yeah, so I moved here to do the course year before last, and absolutely loved it here and really wanted to stay on. So I've got a job on, and I'm now continuing living in Stromness. And just to follow up what everyone's saying, the community is super welcoming here to students from all over. Everyone's interested to find out each other's stories and what they can bring to the community. And well, I would say some students come here and really want to stay on, and there's definitely opportunities, like everyone's been saying, for jobs within the sector here with quite a few companies, and all really close by to where the university is. A few of them are based, so you get the opportunity to speak to people within the industry, and you'll get to know them throughout the year. And that certainly was a great advantage I found, both with doing dissertation and then with applying for jobs afterwards. And yeah.
So sorry, Rafaela, let me just follow that up a little bit. What made you choose the Orkney Islands? What was it, the fact that it was on the Orkney Islands? Was that a huge appeal for you? Or was it the program intricacies that appealed you towards it?
Well, it was kind of both. I did naval architecture and ocean engineering a while back, and with the intention of at some point going into renewables. And I had chosen not to go straight into use my degree after, so I've come back as a mature student. And the reason I chose to do the marine renewable energy was that I wanted something that allowed me to learn what was going on in the sector now, and it's very up to date. And I have actually gone into a technical role. I'm doing the research and development engineer in the technical team at EMEC. So I'm using a combination of what I've learned this last year and also my previous degree. And also Orkney, really, the idea of moving to Orkney just really attracted me. I'd been living in Glasgow before that, and yeah, really like the idea.
Very different indeed. Thank you, Rafaela. Karen, if I can
come
come to you.
Gareth.
Sorry, Simon, of course, go on.
Sorry, there's just a couple of things we probably should mention in terms of the Orkney experience. First of all, I think we're up there with the best view from any university campus, and I wish I could show you, but my camera is sadly fixed. Looking out to my left and looking over Stromness Harbour, you see the ferry coming and going, and fishing boats coming and going, and green hills in the distance. More importantly, talking about this Orkney community we keep talking about, some people have this image of Scottish islands as being very austere, conservative places ruled by a Puritan church. And that is true for some Scottish islands, but I want to say that it's not true here. There are thriving churches here, and if you're religious, you'll be very welcome here. But it's also quite an open and cosmopolitan environment. We've just had Orkney Pride last weekend. We had a big parade. So whatever your background, whoever you are, you will find welcome here. If you have specifics, please do ask either here or in private, but it's not something you need to worry about.
Excellent. And Karen, sorry, if I could just come to you quickly. Apologies again, it's taken quite a while to get to yourself. But to talk about the international nature and the cosmopolitan nature, obviously, I think one of the words that I took from Simon when he introduced you at the beginning was the word international. So if you can talk to me a bit more about the types of cultures within the programs and the courses and what you can expect if you are a student.
Oh my goodness, how to answer that?
Loaded question.
Yeah, I think just I guess to build on what Simon and Joe have already said is that on the programs that we offer here, we do get a wide range of different students from all over the place. So I'm thinking, for example, last year on the program that I lead, the Marine Renewable Energy program, we had a few French students. This year we've got a couple of students from India. So we do really just get students who are all over coming to take part in these programs, again, because we really are at the forefront of the sector. And I think that does contribute to a really nice culture, both within the Orkney campus of Heriot-Watt, because we do have a wide range of students from different international locations. It does bring that cosmopolitan sense. One of the things that we've done a couple of times now since I've been here is have evening events where we have the different students bring along cuisines from their home countries, for example, and everybody gets the opportunity to learn more about other people's cultures, about their food, and to really have that sort of social component to what they do. And I think that, again, that's one of the really nice things about the Orkney campus, is because we are a little bit smaller, we can run events like that where we can create a really close student community and student sense of community, as well as being part of the broader Orkney community. And again, you know, as has already been discussed, a lot of our students stay on in the Orkney community to work as well. And so that means that we have a lot of international students that have come, have stayed, and then end up contributing to that much more cosmopolitan feel of Orkney as well. So it really does. It starts with the Orkney campus, and it kind of spreads on out into the rest of the Orkney community. And I think that's really lovely.
I think you've teed me up lovely for my next question. Actually, I was going to come to you, Simon, and again, if anyone feels the need to kind of chip in and talk about it, please do so. But one of the questions that's come in was, what's the typical class size, and therefore is there a strong sense of community among postgraduates? But going back to the class sizes, does that mean that the education therefore is much more one-on-one learning and perhaps that more personal feel? Simon, if I can begin with you, and then obviously we'll move down.
Sure. So the class size varies a lot, partly from year to year, because our numbers do vary, and partly according to which course, which module you're on, because some of them are optional. So some of them have fewer or greater number of people on. I would say on average, you're looking at between, on the smallest ones, 3 or 4 students, and on the largest ones in a big year, up to 25, say. I don't think we've ever been above 35. So you're looking at relatively small groups and quite a lot of individual attention. On the community angle, I think most years our students gel quite well across the different people studying different things and people coming from different backgrounds and different countries. I think Raphael is probably best placed to speak about that from personal experience, but I'll pass on to anyone else who wants to weigh in.
Rafaela, if you would like to just carry on that and see how we go on from there.
Yeah, I'd say definitely there's things going on sort of organised, like Karen was saying, within the sort of university, and people getting involved with sort of outside groups as well. And there's definitely sort of mixing and gelling between the different programs, because you're in classes with them all. And it's also really nice because you can get to know the PhD students that are here as well. With it being the small university and having the same sort of hangout area, you do get to know sort of all the different people. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. One of the questions that I want to ask, Joe, if I can come to you at this point, it's a really basic question, but I think it's always important to talk about it. Is the course fun? Because just listening to you guys, you're obviously all very passionate about what you do. But I suppose if your background is sitting down doing accounts and stuff like that, you're not going to find this particularly fun. But if you're from this sector and you've got a science degree and this is what gets you going, it does look like it's going to be quite a good 12 months or 24 months, depending on what you go for.
Yeah, well, I might be biased, but I think it's quite fun. I mean, I'm very involved with teaching on the sort of practical skills side of things. And inevitably, that does involve us going out on boats, out at sea, or getting wet by going snorkeling, or for those who are qualified, you know, you might go diving as well. And inevitably, all of that involves a huge amount of teamwork, working together. And, you know, sometimes it can be a bit challenging, you know, but by working together in a team, supporting each other, you do get that kindred spirit and that sense of fun, which really brings things together. And particularly, I would say in our overseas field course to Malaysia, you know, we work really hard. We have quite long days, but we also do have a lot of fun, you know, enjoying the time in the water, also doing a few social events, a little bit of karaoke here and there, just to liven things up, you know. So we do try and have a balanced approach to what we do there, Gareth, and I hope that gives a bit of a flavour certainly from my side of things. I'm sure others would want to chip in on that as well.
It does. I just saw Rafaela's face drop the moment you mentioned karaoke, so I tried to think where the mind went there.
Can I
I'm
just
gonna,
add something in there
Karen,
as
yeah, I
well,
was going to come
Gareth,
to
if
you
that's
next.
okay? Just to say that even if, although obviously the courses that Joe's talked about that are much more practical are a lot of fun, I think it's important to note that even if you choose a program that has less of the practical courses, or you choose to take an approach that involves a little bit less of the practical approaches, we do, or we have in the past, run a week-long field trip, for want of a better word, each year, where we actually have students from Edinburgh also come up to Orkney, and all of the programs participate in this. And it actually involves a little bit of practical work as well, and the students are given a challenge to work together as teams on, and it's a really nice way in terms of that. Oh, apologies. That was our fire alarm. In terms of creating a sense of community, it's actually lovely for that part, but it's also a lot of fun. So it's an opportunity for the students to really get to know each other, to use a challenge-based piece of work to work together in teams and get to know each other on the Orkney campus, but also their compatriots who are undertaking similar programs in Edinburgh as well. So I just wanted to raise the point, even if you don't take the practical classes, there is still those opportunities to have a lot of fun, to get to know people and really build that culture as well.
Excellent. And Simon, can I just come to you quickly? Because one of the questions I noted you answered was, what does my undergraduate degree need to look like in order to study one of these programs or courses? There are other programs you can study outside of the science field that can be quite broad, and you can do one career and move on to another quite swiftly. But you did say, obviously, it needs to be a science degree background, but obviously, presuming it can be even more broader than that if you wanted it to be.
It can be broader than that.
Yeah.
It's very slightly between the programs. I know IMS, International Marine Science, is slightly more restrictive, and I'll let Joe answer that one. But for Reset, and I believe for MRE, any undergraduate degree, it does not have to be a science degree. We've had lawyers be really successful on this program in the past, and one of them I know is now the head of asset management, I think, for a renewable energy company in Germany.
Yeah.
We've had, I think we had somebody once with a music background, which is interesting. We've had people from finance. Of course, we have a lot of scientists as well, but it doesn't have to be a science background. What I usually say about certainly my program is, because we have a wide range of students and we have really broad subject areas, for almost everybody, there'll be one bit of the program that is revision. And you know it already. In fact, may know it better than the teacher, which is great. You can help them out. And for almost everyone, there'll be one area that is really outside their comfort zone and really new. But the beauty is that those will be different areas for different students. So outside of assessments, at least, we encourage people to work together, help each other, share their experiences.
Excellent. Joe, do you want to answer that from your perspective there? Because obviously, like Simon mentioned, you got people from all different backgrounds, and people just think science, have to shoehorn it into science, but it's not the case, is it?
No, I mean, I think we will always look on a case-by-case basis at people who make an approach to study with us. The courses are quite broad here, and we do take students from a range of different backgrounds and experiences. And, like Simon mentioned, particularly, I remember we have had students coming from law, which is a bit unusual for an environmental degree. But having said that, this particular student adapted extremely well, and the complementary experience of the law and the environment together set them up well, for a career doing law for an environmental consultancy company. So it sort of does depend a little bit on the individual, and we normally would speak, directly with the individual to try and assess that when we're making decisions on admitting students to programs. So I hope that helps to answer that query, Gareth.
It does, Joe. Thank you. Sarah, can I just invite you on at this point? Because Sarah deals with, for those that are watching, more of the admissions-y types questions. And we have had a few come in. And if we can talk to begin with about the application process and how one would go about applying, because we've had a few students come on and say, I want to apply. And also about the funding element of that as well. What can students expect when they apply for that funding? Is it automatically credited, or do they need to apply for that separately?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll begin with the application process. That is done via our website. So you can log on, create a student portal and submit your application. We're currently accepting applications for another few weeks yet until the September cycle will close. Then we move on to working on the January 2026 and September 2026 intakes. We do recommend getting your application in as soon as possible, just to allow us enough time to get CAS processed through for international students. And then they'll be processing that right until kind of the middle of July to the end of July, hopefully allowing you lots of time to get here in time for September start. It's the first week of September that the welcome week is this year, so it's quite early, and then classes will begin on the 8th of September. In terms of your funding and scholarships, we have got scholarships available at the moment, so I'd recommend keeping an eye on our website. We have sponsorships that come up constantly throughout the year, so it's always good to check when you put your application in, and then throughout your applicant term until you are a student with us, there's always new scholarships coming up. So I'd recommend an eye on our website.
Thank you, Sarah. In terms of accommodation, apologies to the other academics and students, but we want to talk about the nitty-gritty of things. But accommodation opportunities for students to come up to the Orkney Islands, is there guaranteed accommodation? Is it accessible, and how does it compare to other universities and other campuses that you've got?
I can probably take a stab
Yeah,
at that.
Simon. Yeah, feel free. Yeah.
So no, there isn't guaranteed accommodation. We don't have university accommodation in Orkney. We're a very small campus. So students here normally rent rooms or apartments within the town. And so that is the student's responsibility, but we will help. And so far, I don't think we've ever had a problem with a student with nowhere to live. But it can be challenging. So my advice would be, if you are planning to come here, then get in touch with us as soon as you can, so that we can help you find somewhere. So you can do that alongside your admissions process, alongside your application. Get in touch with the Orkney campus itself. It's on icit@heriot-watt.ac.uk. I will put that in the chat in a second. And we have one of our professional services team here keeps a list of available accommodation and can usually help you find somewhere.
Excellent, thank you. And Simon, is it affordable? People will hear remote and just think perhaps a load of rich, expensive people live there, or posh people live there, but is that the case?
We do have some estimates of living costs. I don't have them to hand right now, but if people get in touch again to that email address, we can furnish that. It's certainly cheaper than living in Edinburgh. Obviously, affordability varies from person to person. I would say for the UK, it's not too bad, although it depends how much you want to travel, of course, and how much you want to arrive and leave, because that can be the relatively expensive part.
Of course. And just a couple of final questions for me. I'm just going to go through the list quickly. Can the courses be done online? Is there the opportunity to do things on a distance learning level? Sarah, if I can start with you on that one, then we'll move across to the other academics.
Sure, yeah. So I definitely know there is online options for our Orkney programs as well. There are opportunities to do it online. You'll get the same sort of support as you get on campus. However, I would say nothing really beats the on-campus experience as well. So there's a balance depending on the opportunities you'd like to seek from it. But on campus, definitely you get a lot of support, and you'll get to meet people who are in the same position. Online, you'll get to chat to people and you will have time to talk things through with academics. However, yeah, nothing beats the on-campus opportunities.
Super. A few questions come in, and it's stuff that we've kind of already touched upon. But if we can talk about, Simon, the facilities, because presumably, given the remote location of it, the reason it is there, the campus is there, is because of the facilities and because of what Joe mentioned and Karen mentioned earlier.
Are we talking leisure facilities, or are we talking labs and things like that?
Labs, testing opportunities, yes.
Okay. So actually, Joe might be better placed to answer that, because I think her program uses them more.
Yeah.
I'll happily come back afterwards.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So our campus, it's arranged on several floors. You might be able to deduce that from the lovely photos we showed earlier on. So in the middle floor, that's where the main entrance is. We've got a very large lecture theatre there, which can take up to 80 students. And we use that also for kind of research and workshop events. We've got a smaller teaching room, which is a little bit more intimate and lends itself to kind of workshop style and smaller group teaching. We've got a library area with a computer suite there dedicated for the MSc students. And then a kitchen area and also a sort of hangout area, if you like, with lovely comfy seats and cushions and bean bags and whatnot. So, and that's a nice place to have lunch, just chat to people, have coffees and so on. In the downstairs, we've got a well-equipped laboratory with microscope facilities, instruments for doing various scientific measurements. And we've got a wet room area, which is where we keep all our things like our kit that goes out to sea, our snorkeling equipment, diving equipment, outdoor gear, and so on. And the transition lab also have their research facility, and there's an electronics workshop down on the bottom floor. And on the top floor, we have our boardroom, meeting room, and our staff offices. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of the sort of layout of the facilities that we've got to hand, Gareth.
Excellent. I've got one more final question.
Can I just quickly,
Go
quickly
on, Simon.
pick up
Yeah,
one aspect of that? Joe mentioned the library. I think it's important to mention, actually, we do have a small library here for our students with some of the most relevant stuff for our programs, but also students here have full access to the Heriot-Watt University Library in Edinburgh, full access to the online materials, but also we can have books posted up here at no cost. So you're not disadvantaged by being in the Orkney campus.
Well pointed out. Excellent. And one final question that will go to all of you, really. And this comes in quite early in the presentation, is how is the program or programs equipping graduates to respond to current global crises such as rising sea levels, energy poverty, marine degradation? Obviously, you guys have to be relevant and up to date on the current things that's happening in the world, but presumably they're huge topics of yours and things that when it comes to sustainability and making a difference within the environment, this is what people probably come for. Joe, if I could begin with you, then we'll move to Karen, then we'll wrap up with Simon.
Yeah, well, I think you'll find that all of the staff here are active research staff. And so a lot of what we are researching on touches on these global challenges that we're facing. And we bring that really in a big way, in an integrated way, into our teaching to make sure that we are teaching the latest information, you know, as that research becomes available. Very quick example, some research that I'm doing at the moment is on blue carbon habitats, how to keep the carbon in the sea. And a lot of that work that we're putting out now is also feeding directly into our Orkney Islands Marine Spatial Plan, which is currently being developed. So we are submitting data layers for that to have a direct impact in that. You know, and we encourage the students to get involved in projects around that as part of the courses, but also around the dissertation aspect as well, you know, to get experience hands-on of that approach to addressing the key challenges, Gareth.
Thank you. And Karen, if I can move on to you as well, because presumably it'd be such a big factor into what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing I would note is that marine renewable energy really is a cutting edge area of development industrially around the world, not just in Scotland or the UK, but around the world at the moment. So the topic itself really is at that sort of leading edge of what's going on and dealing with challenges around energy security and things like that. So I think that's the first point I would point out. And as Joe mentioned, everybody that is working in the Orkney campus really is at the forefront of leading research. That research does feed into what we teach on these courses. And Simon mentioned earlier on, I'm leading a project called Transex, which is looking at energy transitions and looking at how these energy transitions have affected coastal community resilience and the resilience of the environment that these communities rely on. So it's environmental and social science, it's interdisciplinary. We're actually bringing in arts and humanities and archaeology and law and all sorts of different disciplines. And I think that's another really exciting thing about the Orkney campus here is we're very interdisciplinary. And again, that is very much at the forefront of dealing with global challenges. When we're looking at these global challenges, we have to take an interdisciplinary approach. And that's something that we've got a huge amount of experience on here in this campus. So I think, again, that's something that we offer that perhaps might not be so common elsewhere.
Excellent. Simon, if I can just give the final word to yourself before we wrap up. Just a word quickly on those that, and I know you've all got your own different niche areas here, but if you can just say a quick word on the Orkney Islands, why come to Orkney, and when admissions are, but obviously you're looking for September this year, but obviously further beyond that. Is it September 26, although it seems miles away, it's not that far away. Is there anything in between? Is there on-demand start dates? Is there January start dates and so on from there? To the best of your ability, if you could answer that one, and then we'll wrap
Sure.
up.
So on campus, we have one start a year in September. So you can come September 25 or September 26. I'm sure Sarah and her team would love to hear from you either way. Online, we do let people start any semester. So that's September, January, or May. If you're going that route. In terms of a final thing about Orkney, I would say Orkney is a wonderful place. It's a unique experience to live here for a year. I think our programs are great, but it's also just a really good experience in a more general sense. Come and join us.
Excellent. What a way to wrap up. Thank you. Simon, Joe, Rafaela, thank you for taking the time. Karen as well, and Sarah in the background also. If anyone has any questions surrounding this webinar or anything, whether you're watching live, on demand today, over the next week, or in the coming months, please reach out. There is a link in the email that you will receive. And also, if you have any questions, reach out directly to Sarah in admissions or any of the other team via any social media method, via LinkedIn or via the website also. But thank you for now. Thank you for all participating. We look forward to seeing you again in the not too soon future. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.